Whitetail deer are the most abundant and widespread deer species in North America. Their population is estimated to be around 30 million, making them a significant component of the country's wildlife. However, these deer are facing a threat from a disease called chronic wasting disease, and the conservation management of this disease has become a controversial topic in the U.S.
Hunting has become a controversial practice in modern times. My name is Dan Cabela, and I'm traveling the globe to explore the true impact that hunting is having on our remaining wild landscapes. This practice goes as far back as human history can remember, but does it have a place in modern conservation?
Whitetail deer are found throughout the continental United States. They are a highly adaptable species that can thrive in a variety of habitats and are prolific breeders. Whitetail deer hunting contributes significantly to conservation funding and the economy in the U.S. State wildlife agencies often rely on hunting licenses and fees for conservation efforts and managing deer populations. Despite their abundance, whitetail deer are facing challenges such as habitat loss due to urbanization, vehicle collisions, and disease. Chronic wasting disease, or CWD, has become a concerning issue in whitetail populations around the country, and I want to find out more about what is being done about the issue. CWD has been detected in wild and captive deer populations across numerous states in the U.S., predominantly in the Midwest, Rocky Mountain region, and some parts of the East Coast. I'm traveling to Arkansas to learn about some of the research being done to understand more about chronic wasting disease in whitetail deer. It's a very controversial subject. There are lots of folks who don't even think it's a real thing, but we're going to spend a couple days with the team here capturing some whitetail and taking samples and take a look at this.
Chronic wasting disease is a prion disease that affects members of the cervid family, so deer, elk, moose, reindeer, species like that. It causes a neurodegenerative condition where basically this misfolded protein accumulates in their brain, causes tissue damage, and ultimately results in the death of the animal.
The disease spreads through direct contact between infected and healthy animals, as well as indirectly through contaminated environments. At this point, the disease is untreatable. Here we are, we've arrived at the catch site for tonight. Pretty excited to do this. This is different than other catching I've done, so it's gonna be a new experience and I can't wait to get this started. You must be Lisa.
You must be Dan.
I am.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
We're about ready to go set up some rockets to catch some deer tonight. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's go.
Let's do it.
So we have our rocket net staged over here, set up, and then across the field we have our blind where we will look through a thermal scope to tell the position of the deer. So the position of the deer when they're at the rockets, before we fire, we want them to be right in the center. So this is the explosives and the metal. So the rockets are essentially like a firework that we shoot over the deer that are connected to the net. So we have 4 of those go off at once that shoot a large net over the deer. They're synchronized. So they'll all fly over the deer at once. And then the rocket is connected to the net right here.
Sure.
We also have the weights, which keep the net in place. And what we'll use, this thermal scope. This is to help us tell the position, along with our satellite camera, where the deer are in the field. This picks up their heat, and that way I can know if their heads are up or down. So we have the rocket set. We have the charge button, and then when I'm ready to fire, I press fire.
So we're gonna need to get cozy, it sounds like.
Yep, it might be a long set.
The goal of the deer capture is to take samples from a large number of individuals to learn more about the disease and hopefully how to better manage it. I've done a lot of capture in the past, numerous different animals. This one's a little different because we're using the rocket nets. We sat for quite some time, had to be very still, but eventually deer walked into the capture zone and we were able to capture some deer. There it goes. And once you shoot off those nets, the explosion is actually, it's like, wow. I mean, the first time I heard it, it was much louder than I imagined. And you hit it, and then all of a sudden, you know, you've just got to jump out of that tent and get on that deer as quick as possible. And you try to sedate it as quickly as possible, and then back off and let the deer relax a little bit for 15 minutes or so before we can start doing the testing and collecting the data.
36 even per head.
Chronic wasting disease, or CWD, has the potential to significantly reduce deer populations in affected areas. It's a concern for wildlife management agencies because of its long incubation period, making it difficult to detect in early stages.
So part of the sampling that we do is to test if they're positive for CWD or not. And then the collar also lets us know when it dies. And so we get a full picture of what happened to this deer.
This is great data that they're getting. I think it's very important to the health of these herds to understand what's going on. And hopefully we'll be able to find her offspring in a few weeks, and that would really kind of bring this thing full circle.
Okay, I can breathe now.
So we're here back in Arkansas again as part of this CWD project that we're working on. And this time we're actually collaring fawns, you know, with expandable collars. And we haven't been here long, and we've already got our first one spotted here. So we're about to head over and get our hands on this fawn and see what this is all about.
We're a little bit later in the spring now, and so we're done catching adults, and actually we are following those does that we caught through the winter and watching for them to drop fawns.
Just a little one. Yeah, it's tiny. Oh, it's tiny. It wasn't gonna. Okay. All right. It's okay.
Ideally, it's best if we know which doe the fawn belongs to, and so we can pair their survival with the doe's CWD status. And they use these expandable collars on the fawns that allow them to continue growing and behaving pretty normally. But we use this special time early in their lives when they are less mobile to get hands on them without actually needing any drug or nets or any of those things.
59.9.
This research project examining the population level effects of CWD on our whitetail deer here in Arkansas is the largest research project that the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission has ever undertaken. Our research partners include the University of Georgia and Colorado State University. Our funding and land management partners include the National Park Service, the U.S. Forest Service, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service through the Wildlife Restoration Program, and funding has also been provided by the CWD Alliance and the Cabela Family Foundation.
Fawns are hidden in vegetation by their mothers, who nurse them 4 to 5 times a day. This fawn's mother will find her again by its scent. This important work can serve to inform scientists on the best way to go about managing the spread of the disease. But unfortunately, it is not possible to prevent the disease entirely.
We received a phone call, and we've come to an area where there is a potential deer with CWD. And based on observation, there's clearly something wrong with this doe.
So you see that deer, she's pretty clinical there, and we're gonna try to see if we can get a safe shot to try to put her down.
I'll just stick to you. She's wandering around, drinking lots of water, appears not to have any idea where she's at. She's not afraid of us. So we have decided that it's best to take her out of the herd and send off samples. Symptoms of CWD are not clearly visible in early stages, which is part of what makes it so difficult to manage and stop the spread of the disease. As a hunter, to see a white-tailed deer in person suffering from this type of disease is heartfelt. And hopefully in the future, we'll be able to find a cure for this.
Because of the prevalence of CWD in this area and the signs that we saw her demonstrate before she was put down, we're really pretty certain. So we'll just confirm that diagnosis and we'll dispose of her in a way that doesn't move her to other parts of the landscape. Chronic wasting disease is definitely a very political topic. It can be a very hot button issue, but when we see landowners who are observing these sick animals in the late stages, I know that they understand and see what the disease is doing on the landscape and what it's doing to our wild cervid populations. It's really unfortunate that there are so many different voices kind of muddying the waters about how important this issue is and what we need to do to address it, because the sooner we can take action, the more likely we are to have success.
The results came back as positive for CWD. I'm traveling to Texas, where deer breeders' livelihoods are being affected by state management actions, like the culling of deer and the restriction on live transportation. Exactly what should be done on state and private land has been generating some heated debate.
CWD is really just a made-up name. Parks and Wildlife cannot show you one deer that died of CWD. A white-tailed deer in Texas died of CWD. And even in Texas, in 2012, according to Parks and Wildlife, there was over 3 million deer in Texas. Now there's over 5 million deer in Texas. So they're still increasing drastically in Texas.
There are those who believe that aggressive culling is required of infected deer populations to minimize the spread of CWD.
I would have never thought Parks and Wildlife would have been my biggest enemy. And their big deal is over CWD, which is no threat to the wildlife, but they want to destroy my ranch. Unless all the senators and representatives in the state realize that Parks and Wildlife is destroying a billion-dollar industry, the deer breeding operation in Texas is going down.
While the culling of deer and restrictive measures on hunting could help to stop the spread of the disease, this could also result in significant economic and social consequences.
Over 35 years of blood, sweat, and tears, raising these big bucks, working with them, and enjoying them, and Parks and Wildlife is bringing all this to naught by their ignorant, stupid deal about CWD. I'd cry if I wasn't so old, but I'm too old to cry, I guess.
So as far as the future of deer breeding in Texas, I think we're going to be moving to a much more responsible model. We want to increase the surveillance with kind of rudimentary tools that we're using at this point to try and find chronic wasting disease where it exists and prevent the transmission moving forward. That obviously has a certain economic burden on deer breeders in general, but the intent is to be able to make sure that the long-term viability of those businesses is not compromised by the rapid dissemination and high amplification of the disease within those facilities. In 2018, we really had a handful of free-ranging detections within Texas outlined by these gray counties, and then these yellow dots signifying infected breeding facilities. Now, here in 2023, we've seen the rapid expansion of CWD positive detections within breeding facilities. And each of these red, yellow dots indicates an infected breeding facility.
Better communication can help to get all stakeholders on board with what needs to be done to manage the risks.
So we've arrived at Deer Breeding Ranch. I'm here to meet veterinarian Pat O'Neill, who does a lot of CWD testing all over the state. Part of the maintenance program of this ranch is they periodically do CWD samples on some of their deer to make sure that they're clean, and we're gonna do that today.
Hey, Dan.
Morning.
Good morning. Thanks for coming out.
No, I'm glad to be here.
We're ready to get started. If you want, we'll show you what testing deer is about.
That sounds great.
Come on in.
One thing that is certain is that not enough is known about CWD. Ongoing research aims to better understand the disease, develop reliable diagnostic tests, and potentially develop vaccines or treatments.
We have euthanized very many deer simply because the odds of them being exposed and the potential for them to have had the disease was high. The deer that we've tested over the years that have been positive, you could not have picked them out as far as, oh, that one looks like it has CWD. They'll look just like this. And so that's why it's critical, if you find it someplace, to know and isolate them if you can. Everybody that has an interest in deer, whether they hunt or they're just like to watch them in the morning drinking coffee, has the same focus to try to make this disease less impact on our herd. The focus should be, as we go forward, is public education. They're not afraid of deer. You know, I have clients that say, aren't you worried about working around those zombie deer? Not at all, because even if I'm on a positive herd, I'm not going to get anything from those. And I think if we go forward and we educate people and gain their confidence that this is not a human health hazard, that's the first focus we should focus on. And then hunting is a big industry here, as is the livelihood of these people that own these deer farms. And they have sacrificed many, many dollars to comply and try to get this disease under control. There are many, many ranches and small towns in Texas that depend on the hunting industry.
Management strategies that restrict hunting or the movement of carcasses will have a big impact on livelihoods and have economic implications for hunting-related industries.
Slowly, as the non-resistant deer fade away and they're replaced by deer that can sustain this disease but not ever get sick from it, and the public's not afraid of it, we can live and manage this disease just fine.
While CWD is a significant concern due to its fatality and potential for population decline, it's crucial to consider all the challenges that whitetail face, which requires a comprehensive approach, looking at habitat conservation, wildlife management, disease control, and the ecological balance within ecosystems.
So it's been pretty enlightening taking a look into CWD and its impact on whitetail deer and deer hunting and deer breeding. But it's comforting to know that there's a lot of good folks coming together to try and find solutions. And I can't think of anything more fitting than a glass of Pendleton whiskey at this moment.
Finding consensus on CWD management is challenging due to its complexity. It requires balancing immediate action with the need for sustainable, well-informed, and ecologically sound approaches to manage this complex disease.